Now, from Adrian Swart, we have a question that I think we at the IRR have looked at over the last decade at least, is this connection between socioeconomic pressures and protests or civil unrest. To me, it seems quite obvious that if you're going to make people poor, to quote our colleague Ian Cruikshanks, poor people become hungry people become angry people. Are we looking at more of this civil unrest taking into account that the socioeconomic deterioration of the last decade has pushed up the number of these protests, violent protests, from, up by 300, 400%?
I think we are indeed, because there is the existing pattern, and it very much tracks the fact that living standards have not been going up since 2000 and really since 2009 in the way that they were before. So clearly, people who are hungry and angry are more likely to protest and then to resort to violence to make sure that their message gets through to government, which they see as essential, that a peaceful protest could simply be ignored. We also know that, as far as I recall, that the figures of schools that have been vandalized or burnt has now risen to about 1,000. I saw that figure a couple of weeks ago. It might be more by now, but not reported by the government. So there's evidence that people are resorting to arson and quite a high level of asset destruction in this period. And as anger grows, one fears that there will indeed be a shift from the very patient, long-suffering queues of people waiting for food parcels to an angry looting of food trucks or anywhere where they think that food might be stored. And then we have on the streets policemen and soldiers, unfortunately, and the soldiers in particular have no means of controlling crowds that don't involve the use of lethal force if they think that they have to stop them. And they don't have rubber bullets and they don't have tear gas, they don't have the kind of equipment that riot police would have, then what are they going to do? And unfortunately at Marikana we saw that if you deploy tactical force of policemen, they will use what they have, which in that case was R5 rifles. And we risk that the army will resort to the weaponry that they have. And perhaps, Herman, you could just elaborate on how odd it is that the army only has that kind of equipment available to them.
Yeah, it's a very interesting issue, and it's quite an upsetting one. The army, as I think I've said before, as I understand it, from people I've spoken to, they've really been dragged kicking and screaming into this policing role. And I've heard a few reasons for this. One being about cost. The police has a massive reserve force that it can call up, that it just hasn't called up yet, because that would have to be done out of the police budget. That's one of the reasons I've heard why the military, SUNDEF, with their separate budget, is actually involved. But as you say, Anthea, the problem we have is that these soldiers aren't policemen, even if they do policing duties in the Congo and other areas as part of UN missions. But they don't have rubber bullets. They have lethal weapons. They don't have scattershot, non-lethal shotgun ammunition on them. They don't have the tear gas you mentioned. So essentially, if you're a soldier, we can put ourselves in the mind of that soldier. Firstly, this soldier is probably, if he's in a township, he is from a similar township. So this isn't an outsider coming out to oppress or impose. This is someone who really understands the pressures and also the way that mob justice works within these townships. So that's a first danger point. Secondly, the soldier is under-equipped. So he can only use lethal force, try to convince verbally, or use humiliating physical force that we've seen. And I think that probably caused the death of Mr. Khoza. So these soldiers are, I don't think they are, I'm very hesitant, having spoken to some people, of calling them a problem, but they certainly don't seem to be part of a solution because of their under-equippedness and because of the fact that this isn't really their role. And my fear, my genuine fear, is that the socioeconomic pressures will become so great that these soldiers might, I think, very much like the Marikana policemen, undertrained, under-equipped, scared of what might happen to them. I mean, we look at this country's history, we see things like policemen during the apartheid years being necklaced. These things, these pressure points are still very much alive. So that makes me very, very terrified for the civil unrest that might result from these kinds of socio-economic pressures.